Good morning, everyone. With the new day comes new strength and new thoughts. Set the theme of success and positive action that is certain to echo through your entire life.
Now I kindly welcome Dr. R. Sendal Kumar, Program Officer of National Service Scheme, to deliver the welcome address.
Coming together is the beginning. Keeping together is progress. Working together is success. It's an immense pleasure to welcome each and everyone for the webinar. Smart Agriculture Using IoT conducted on behalf of Astra 2021. I am proud to welcome our most admirable chief guest, Mr. G. Bhagat Singh, founder and CEO, Calicito Infotech Private Limited. He had his bachelor's degree in electrical and electronics engineering and started his amazing career in early 2000s as a network engineer, managing IT software and serving servers working with Infosys. Mr. Bhagat Singh was involved in developing mission critical embedded software for industrial automation customers in Europe and North America. Besides being a passionate reader and traveler, he has a list of technical expertise working with silicon vendors, OEMs, machine builders, system integrators, and technology end users. It's a great pleasure to welcome Mr. Bhagat Singh, who is going to make our event more curious and enlightening. I welcome you, sir.
Thank you,
I would
sir.
like to welcome our NSS program officers and other department faculty members for this event. At last, I welcome all the student participants for this webinar. Once again, I extend my warm welcome to everyone. So have a happy learning. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, sir. Before entering into the webinar, let me share some points with you for the smooth flow of the webinar. Participants will be muted in order to avoid background noise. In case of any queries, use the chat box. The session is open to questions, so you can leave your questions in the chat box. Your questions will be monitored by us and will be addressed in the question and answer session at the end of this webinar. In case of any technical errors, contact or report us immediately.
Now, we have a chief guest for the day, Mr. Bhagat Singh, founder and CEO, Calis Private Limited, to speak on the topic smart agriculture using IoT.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're
Yes, sir,
audible,
you are
sir.
loud and clear.
Okay, I hope it's loud and clear. Cool. I would like to request Control to share my screen. Yeah. Is my screen visible to everyone?
Yes, sir, visible, sir.
Visible. Okay. Yeah, I'd like to thank PSG for this opportunity to meet you all today. And a special thanks to everyone because getting up early in the morning on Sunday and spending 1 hour on a topic like this, I really appreciate your all your commitment and happy to also thanks for giving me this opportunity. Today we are going to talk about IoT and agriculture, and I'm going to really touch upon a larger term because we live in an industrialized society, and I would like to introduce this topic of agriculture and IoT in the context of an industrialized world. Right. And let me introduce myself. So I'm Bhagat, the founder and CEO of Calicito, and I have a passion for engineering and technology. And I aim to bring a positive difference in the life of every human being by enabling decentralized decision making. Because when we use technology, there are two things we can do. We can put all the data in one place and create a system where privacy and confidentiality, everything becomes a big threat. And on the other hand, we also enable only a few to leverage and make benefit of it. But I believe in enabling decentralized decision making through the use of technology. And I have over 18 years of experience now. I worked across the industry spectrum, both in IT and the OT space. For people who don't know what OT means, OT is the operational technology where we deal with all the world of the, this IoT, the things in the IoT. And before starting this company in 2007, I used to work for Infosys, and I was part of a team developing mission critical embedded software. When we call something as mission critical, we talk about people dying if your software doesn't work. And I have experience in such thing, or expecting systems that will never be shut down in the next 10 years or 20 years lifetime period. And yeah, in all this, I have traveled a lot. I've met a lot of different people and explored a lot of different cultures. And at least once I have circumnavigated this planet. So I would like to share my experience today and my interpretation of the things around us and my interpretation of how I see this entire IoT thing and this industrial revolution going to change our life. You open Google and you just type IoT in agriculture. I think many people use this image, and we have also used this image in some of our videos. And it's pretty easy to talk about how you can sense moisture. It's very easy to talk about how drones can be used for a few, human labor intensive agricultural processes, how your tractor can be connected to the cloud. It's a lot easier to talk about all these things, but I'm not going to talk about any of that today. I'm not going to talk about anything you will find within the 5 minutes research in Google. So I'm going to talk about something different, and I hope you will appreciate the relevance to this topic, because I think I'm addressing a lot of young adults who are probably not going to step on this field and work on this field, but you may be the people who can influence how this is going to change. Coming to the agenda, so as I said, I'm not going to jump into the IoT agriculture topic. Let's first define the problem statement before we try to solve something. And when we try to define the problem statement, you will understand that we need a big disruption to solve this. And then we have to define what a disruption means. So we'll look into what that means, and then we will go a little deeper into the history, because we need to know where we come from before we try and solve a problem. And I will introduce to this idea of fourth industrial revolution, which according to me is a superset of IoT and what people call as digital transformation, and this entire technology wave with respect to AI, AR, blockchain, everything together. And and then finally we will touch upon a few Indian context specific stuff in terms of renewable and small and medium scale businesses, jobs, environment, education, and how you can play a part in this agricultural thing. And finally, we'll touch upon the concept of new business models and end the presentation today. So, as I said, we'll first define the problem statement. So the first thing that strikes me when I talk about agriculture is between 33% and 50% of the food produced across the globe is never eaten, and it's wasted. I'm sure some of you this will take you back, because we always see this, pictures of hungry people not having anything to eat. And then when you realize that 33 and 50% of food is just wasted and not eaten, there is a problem to be solved. And this food, right, like the unused food that we produced, consumed about 25% of fresh water. So we use about 25% of fresh water every year in production of food. So this is, think of the amount of water we can save if we are able to save this food that is not eaten. Or if we may make sure, it reaches the right hands. That's another challenge, right, with respect to supply chain. And this unused food, again, doesn't stop from releasing methane, and methane is 23 times more deadly than CO2. So this is a massive problem to solve, and I think this is the first problem to solve when we talk about agriculture. Apart from this, farmers across the globe, it's not specific to India. Like when we always talk about us as an agricultural society, and we say 60% of our population depends on agriculture. But when I started traveling abroad and when I even visited Western developed countries and had chances to interact with farmers there, the complaints are nearly the same. Like they complain about price fluctuations, they complain about government controlled pricing, and they speak about how a more streamlined supply chain can help them. And in all this, right? So you see that all across the planet, it's the same. The problems are the same. It's not just in one place. The magnitude can be different. The way it is hitting the person can be different, because in one country you read about farmer suicides, in the other you don't see them. But then the problems are the same, and which means when we find a solution, it is applicable across the globe. And one of the main things that will help address this challenge is the ability to predict demand. Because if you predict demand, then you can control the price fluctuation. And this government controlled pricing, on one hand, it helps the consumer, but it should also help the farmer. And then, when you are able to predict demand, and then when you streamline your supply chain, then you can make sure your entire wastage is reduced. So here, from this, I really think a discussion on IoT is not about how you instrument the farm, put electronics everywhere, but it's about discussing on how Internet of Things can bring about a digital disruption to make sure this 33 to 50% of food that is getting wasted is really solved, right? So this is the problem that we would like to solve, and this is the main thing. And when we discuss about this, the people normally use different terms to talk about digital disruption. So when people talk about IoT, they really don't talk about electronics, small electronics that goes into different aspects like the farm field or your industry. That's not what we are trying to talk. What we are trying to talk is digital disruption, and but then they come from an electronic space, so they talk about IoT. But if you talk about an IT person, he will talk about digital transformation. Like it's all about software and how it works together to solve a business problem, artificial intelligence. They come from that world. And you talk to an instrumentation person, they'll talk about Industry 4.0. But I think all of them really mean digital disruption, and these are just jargons. One jargon is more interesting for an ECE engineer, other is for a computer science engineer, and other is for a EEE or an E&I person. But what we really mean is digital disruption. So let's take a moment to understand what that means. Of course, finally, we will want to see how it can we can disrupt this entire space to predict demand. Yeah. So here we are going to. I'm going to borrow an idea from a person named Tony Shiba, a lecturer in entrepreneurship in disruption and clean energy at Stanford University. So in one of his lectures, he begins the presentation by showing this picture. So this is a picture of New York street in 1900s, and you can see that there are horse carts all around. And at some point of time in history, all these became cars. So this is 1900. So when do you think all this became, cars? All the horses went away and you only saw horses. And how much time did it take? So I want all of you to type the year in the chat box. So if you think it's 1930, you can type 1930, 1950, or how many years did it take for all these horses to vanish, and then we only saw cars on the street. So this is New York. So I'll wait for 10 seconds. So this is the same street in 1913, and now you can see all cars, and there is only one horse cart here. So it took about 13 years for a change from horses to cars. And think about horses. Horses were one of the first domesticated animals, and it happened over 5,000 years or 10,000 years ago. And so something humankind was used to over, say, thousands of years just vanished in the period of 13 years. So this is what we call as disruption, a massive change in the way we behave, we operate, or we experience our life right? A very short period of time. So this is what we call as disruption. And the reason I'm bringing it up is to see what kind of disruptions are possible in the agricultural space. Again, I would like to touch a little bit about the history. 70,000 years ago, humans were living in caves, hunting animals, and they were more of a hunter and gatherer society. So they ate everything that grew in wild. They were not cultivating, and agriculture didn't exist. And these were some of the selfies they left behind for us to see them. So then the idea of selfie did exist 70,000 years ago, right? And then about 7,000 years ago, civilization started. Roughly about 12,000 to 10,000 years ago, humans started agriculture, right? Once they stopped gathering food and they started cultivating, this relationship between the man and the agricultural produce started, because that's again a living being. The plant is also a living being, and just as the way we domesticated horses or the dog or your sheep, we also domesticated some plants and started growing them in places we like for the purpose of consumption. So this is how agricultural revolution starts, and with that, civilization starts. And roughly about 700 years ago, Renaissance starts. This is the period where you start questioning everything, and with that, the scientific revolution started in Western world. All the major scientists that we have read in our books during our school days and college days, come from this period, right from Galileo to Einstein. And roughly about 70 years ago, or maybe we should also touch upon the first industrial revolution here. So the first industrial revolution happened somewhere between 250 years ago. And this was the advent of steam engine, and we all know what this did. The European powers were able to travel across the planet, and they were able to first trade and then colonize, and then they became the superpowers we know of them today. So this was with the invention of steam engine, and then the second industrial revolution happened roughly about 120 years ago. So if you look at the difference between the timeline, it's about 150 years. And this is when Henry Ford invented the concept of assembly line, where the concept of mass production starts. So until then, you want to produce something in massive quantities. Agriculture was probably the way where you have a field and you cultivate it. But this is a different kind of mass production. So you have an assembly line where the line is moving and the car was in the line and we were producing things. And this started the second way of industrial revolution. And I think this really started changing the way our modern life started looking. And societies became more industrialized and we became less connected with at least the city dwellers. People who lived in cities, they stopped their association with agriculture. You can be born, you can lead a complete 70, 80 years life without really having to see a agricultural field. So this happened about 120 years ago, and roughly about 50 years ago, right? Like you can also see that roughly in half time the next revolution happens. So if there's 150 years, then roughly about 70, 75 years, the third revolution happens where you start using computers as part of your industrial revolution. So you start using robots, you start using your PLCs, you start using your controllers, microcontrollers to automate things. So this is computers being used, even when we talk about IBM is International Business Machine. So we saw them as machines. Computers were seen as machines, and the third industrial revolution meant computers, robots, numerical controls entering into the industry. And by industry, we live in an industrial world. It's actually our day-to-day life. With this calculation, like in half time, so that's roughly in 2005 period, the fourth industrial revolution should have happened. Did it happen or not is a debate I would like to have. Okay. So, but then in 2005 period, we did see something new coming up. Until then, internet, which was early, late 90s and early 2000s, where we started hearing about a new term called internet, primarily in the academic circles initially, but then later, one by one, we started seeing that coming into our day-to-day life. Like our marks were published on internet, and we needed to find a way to access internet so that we can check our exam results and stuff like that. This started in late 90s and early. So around 2005, internet came in, and it's also the time when mobile phone came in. Can we call that as the starting of fourth industrial revolution? Let's see as this presentation progresses. And roughly about 7-8 months ago, or roughly a year ago, we also had this COVID impact, and it again accelerated some of the things we never thought we would do online. So let's look at the disruptions in our lifetime. In the beginning of 2007, so this was the best phone your money could buy, and if people had come in and said, this is going to disrupt, and you're going to have something new coming up where you will be able to, if somebody had come and said, okay, you will have something called an iPhone or an Android platform, which was going to disrupt the way a phone looks, in 2007, we would not have believed, because we would have said, I can send emails, I can receive, I have this, I can install apps, I have internet on mobile. What else can it change? But then, by end of 2007, Apple came and redefined the way a mobile phone looks. And today, all of us carry, it may be from different brands, but essentially, mobile phone looks like this. So this is again a very quick disruption we saw in our lifetime. And this is a graph that shows the adoption of smartphones. And when we see this, mobile phone was there until 2010 or even 2011. But until then, it was flat. Its growth was flat. And suddenly, somewhere in 2011, it started exploding. And this is when Android came in, and the effect of Android can also be seen in iOS growth, right? So the smartphone growth started happening around 11-12 period, and then it was a huge disruption. And soon we started seeing new applications like your Ola or your Uber or your Swiggy coming in, and then you started your day-to-day stuff where you thought, oh, internet cannot change this. Internet cannot change the way I hire a cab or I decide my dinner. But then those things started changing. So these are some of the main disruptions that happened because of one equipment getting internet. So this was one thing. If we talk about IoT, so let's say mobile phone is the first IoT device, right? It has an accelerometer, it has a GPS sensor, it has your touch sensors, it has a bunch of sensing stuff. It can then connect to the cloud, and then it offers a completely new experience. And so this mobile phone and internet combination probably is the first IoT combination, and it happened between 2000 and 2010. I mean, these two came as independent things between 2000 and 2010 and became a single thing between 2010 and 15. And we know now how it has changed our life and how dependent we are on our mobile phone. Today we talk about digital well-being, where anybody who spends less than 3-4 hours on mobile phone on a given day supposed to be who knows more about well-being than people who spend about 8 or 10 hours. So between 15 and 2020, we saw all these new apps coming up and one equipment. Okay, now what happens if internet enters all the equipment, right? What is the potential? So, and why am I talking about this in the context of agriculture, right? Let's see this. So whatever happened due to COVID, we saw that even vegetables were being delivered from mobile applications. So you were able to order your grocery and your vegetables, and they were delivered on to your doorstep. And I think some of that has reduced after the pandemic is in control, but definitely we saw this huge change in our behavior during this period. So before all of this, the world operates, or even today, I think most of the industrial world operates like this. So you have your products like your tractors or your motors on the field, and when we use field, we don't really mean agricultural field. It may also be the factory floor, and you have these unconnected devices. Then you have the first layer of connected devices where you have your valves, motors that are hooked onto the network. And then you have some of these PLCs and control systems from where you can control these devices. You have your HMIs to visualize them. And then you have larger units. So at this level, things start becoming logical. And you have logical groups of production cells, assembly lines, and then data goes into your enterprise. So this is how your setup is today, be it agriculture, be it pharmaceuticals, be it any industry. This is how the hierarchy looks today. And this offers, limited interoperability and constraint integration. So whatever you do when you open your Uber app and call a cab, that's a kind of integration that you cannot expect when the interconnections are like this, because at every level there is a consolidation and only some information goes up. And for you to take a business decision at the enterprise level, for the information to go down, it takes a long time. So when such a constraint integration is there, then others can come and disrupt your business. So when we talk about this IoT and Industry 4.0, it's all about interoperability, right? Why do you want to talk about Internet of Things? You want connections between them. And when you want to connect them, you want them to talk to each other without having to sit and program each time, right? And it's all about interoperability. And what we see is this interoperability will span across organizations. Going back to the car hire or a food ordering experience, when you open your app and when you see the restaurants nearby, these restaurants are owned by different people. And this application is provided to you by a different company. So you can see this, if mobile phone is your first IoT device, you can see that you are using this IoT device to seamlessly flow from one organization to another and do a job. You don't necessarily see it this way, but this is what you do when you open your app. You choose a restaurant, you choose an item, and then say place an order. Then a bank comes in and then takes your money. At least 5-6 organizations work together in making sure your dinner is served to you. And then the guy who comes and delivers is probably an individual who has again onboarded himself onto the platform to work whenever he is available. So it's all about interoperability. It's all about intelligence, because you as an user, you have the intelligence to know which food is available where and what is the cost. The delivery guy is able to understand where he has to go collect, where he has to deliver, and the restaurants have this additional intelligence where they know where the demand is, what food is in demand, and how to produce more of it, and when the demand peaks. So they have intelligence. So it's all about intelligence, and of course it spans across the industries. So a connected world, with a mobile phone, we are able to visualize it in one or two areas, the food delivery or your car hire. So it's a connected world, and this entire thing starts behaving like a smart factory, and then you get these new new experience, life experience, right? And all this is because it's a connected world, and smart decisions are possible, and on-demand business models are possible. Now, if you think of, or if you remove mobile phone and put every other device in this connected world, think of how many new smart decisions are possible and how many new on-demand business models are possible. As part of your academics, you'll be reading a lot about digital twins, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, smart contracts, and all this, right? All these fall apart if you don't have a connected world. So let's come to come back to agriculture and come back to our kitchen. And we spoke about some massive problems like how food is produced and a lot of food is wasted. And we'll come to the other side. We said we'll predict demand, and this is where the demand starts. So on an evening, you want to prepare your dinner and you are confused on what to cook. And this is where it starts. And it's a highly inefficient process because I'm sure when you cook for 2 or 3 people in a home with with one stove, there is no economy of scale, there is no efficiency, and you don't know whether you are producing enough for cooking enough for the people, or you always want to cook a little bit extra, and so that we don't run out of food and people don't sleep hungry. All this happens, and this is something that happens in every house and every day. And if you look at the ingredients that you use for cooking, like if you look at the sunflower and how it's plucked and how the oil reaches, it made into an oil and it reaches your home, or the way apples are packed and delivered to you, or the way chicken, it's all already industrialized, right? Like you are no longer, it's no longer hand plucking and doing it to your own. Say 100 years ago, if you walk into a kitchen, you probably plucked the things from the plant and you bought it from a shop, but then you did the first level of processing. Today, many of these first level of processing is already done, and you probably only do the last mile cooking, right? So your kitchen cabinet looks like this. So you close your eyes, go back to your grandma's time, and when they had opened the kitchen cabinet, did the kitchen cabinet look like this? Was sugar available like this? Was oil available like this? Was milk available like this? Right? So which means we are already industrialized most of these things, and they are packaged and delivered to us. Maybe the last mile we cook it to our taste these days. But what happens with these new applications and new models where today I know I open my app and I place a food order, and if the food order reaches a restaurant and it is received by a robot, and the robot is able to cook the food for me, and an autonomous vehicle then goes and picks the food and comes to my doorstep, and my drone goes and picks it up and keeps it on my dining table, then I don't have to store all these things in my kitchen cabinet, right? And this level of automation gives me, like food gets delivered like this. So this level of automation helps me with a few things. One is I don't have to maintain this inefficient kitchen. I don't have to worry about shopping and filling it all the time. I don't have to break my head on expiry dates. And then when it is completely automated, I can control the amount of salt that goes in, amount of sugar that goes in. So I can customize and make it healthy. And I may still be able to get it from different restaurants, because today I'm ordering from different restaurants. As long as these systems are able to talk to each other on their own, I can buy my drone from any company, and I can choose the company from where I would like to have the delivery from. And I can also choose different restaurants. Today I may order from a restaurant A, tomorrow I can order from a restaurant B. As long as these systems are able to talk to each other, I don't need a kitchen in my home, and I can have healthy food at home. This is a level at which, it is on the demand side. So if something like this happens, then you can think of these restaurants which are already cooking without human intervention. Then they know the demand better, and then they will be able to forward the demand back to the farmer, and then the farmer can then cultivate on demand. Right. So if this entire cycle completes without human intervention and with more artificial intelligence, so basically the AI will tell the farmer that 2 weeks from now, this guy is going to crave for tomatoes, or majority of people in the city are going to crave for tomatoes. So you better plant tomatoes today. So that's a kind of intelligence that can go in, and with like any technology. Like when we talk about technology, we talk about nuclear energy. It can be used for massive destruction, or it can be used for great benefit of humankind. It can be used to generate clean energy. So it all depends on how we use technology, right? We can use technology to spoil ourselves. We can use technology to, change some of the problems we see in our society today. And I see this as a great opportunity to eliminate kitchen from your home. Right, now coming back to this field again, now think of this, if the demand side is fully automated and there is a lot of artificial intelligence algorithms, everything operating, then you can, all these systems, right, all these farming drones or your tractors, your moisture controllers, all these can receive information on what they have to do, right? And this way, you can then finally solve the problem of overproduction, price fluctuation, farmer not getting enough yield, enough value for his produce, or food getting wasted and people sleeping hungry simultaneously happening. Yeah, so this to me is the most exciting idea of this Industry 4.0 technologies or IoT in agriculture. How I can predict demand, how I can streamline supply chain, and how I can remove price fluctuation, and how I can remove middlemen so that the farmer gets the real value for his hard work. But then again, we should also think of how our society is today. Like we say, 60% of India depends on farming. So do we want to see 60? So let's call them as small scale businessmen. 60% of our country are small scale businessmen who are doing farming. Are we going to enable all the 60,000, or do we really want to consolidate them into a few companies? Then who will control this? Right? Those are questions to be debated and discussed. So we discussed about agriculture, but there are so many other industries, and IoT and Industry 4.0 will disrupt each of these different industries in the same exact way. And finally, we look at it. This digital age will have two use cases. One use case is a horizontal use case where machines talk to themselves among them and take decisions for you, or you take it to a central processing system and you take some decision and you forward it to the next level. And you only have one user, which is the human being. But the way the world is evolving now, we are starting to see that all our decision making, we also use artificial intelligence to assist the human intelligence in our decision making. So this is the new normal that we are heading towards, and every system is becoming more open. The way Android opened up the app ecosystem for a mobile phone, every system we see across the board are becoming more open, and they are coming up with more unified architectures where devices can talk to themselves and new business models are possible. So this is the direction the world is heading towards. And in this direction, you will no longer own a car. You will no longer have a kitchen in your home. And it may also be interesting to discuss about what happens to your business, what happens to your job, because finally, like, what will you do for your living, and how will you then live in this new normal? So in the Indian context, so when we talk about population, we are one of the most populated geographies in the planet, and about 20% of humans live in developed world, and 80% of humans live in developing world, and majority of them live in India. Between 1980 and 2015, PC displaced about 3.5 million jobs in US, and in the same period, it created roughly about 5 to 6 times more jobs in the new jobs that arise. Can we say the same thing about a developing country? Like, will all our people who depend on farming for their life will be able to be displaced from that and will be able to onboard to new jobs in the same way? These are questions for which we don't have ready-made answers. This is the first time such a thing is happening in human history, and we have to understand what is going to happen. Okay, this is a excerpt from a UNIDO panel discussion. So they listed down these points. Okay, I'll just read it out. So the developing countries must keep up with technological changes to ensure that they are not left behind by this Industry 4.0 or IoT. And applying these technologies can be a gradual process, and some solutions do not have to be expensive. So two things: you cannot disrupt people who are not ready for disruption, and you have to do things gradually. And some of these things need not be expensive. Technology need not always be expensive, but you still need good information and communication technology infrastructure across, and you have to move all these small players into the digital economy slowly. And of course, countries and companies will need a digital strategy, a strategic vision for a fully integrated multi-stakeholder policy approach. You know, multi-stakeholder also means a democratic process, which means slower decision making. But I think that's the best humans have today. And education and technical qualification should play an integral role in digital strategy and business-friendly environment. You know, like you cannot do this without your population being educated and the technical aptitude of the population being at a higher level than what it is today. And of course, continuous learning and on-the-job training are necessary to move people into this new space. And these are my opinions and interpretations. So I believe that developed countries and developing countries should have different goals, and new laws and changes to legal systems are a must. And governments, employers, the farm landowner or the farm laborer, we will all have additional work to do. This is not just agriculture; it's across the spectrum. Anything you touch will need this. And talking about the challenges openly and preparing for the change is the need for the heart. So you cannot say, "Oh, I will stay without changing." That's not the right thing to do. At the same time, when you change, it cannot be too disruptive for the people at the receiving end. The first thing is you have to educate them, qualify them, and then move them into the new world. And a democratic approach with positive attitude towards change is a must. And a disclaimer here, I prepared this slide about 2 years ago, and it has nothing to do with the present situation in our country. And yeah, we are prepared. This is again my opinion. So we are prepared as we are prepared for Industry 1.0. So at the end of 1.0, we became colonies of the Western world, and I hope we learn from that and we do something different this time. In the context of jobs for the young professionals in you who will enter the job market very soon, old jobs will vanish. It may be agriculture. It may also be the IT job that you dream about. You saw your elder cousin entering and making a lot of money. Like some of these jobs will vanish. Anything where some of the core human elements are needed, and the core human intelligence that cannot be replaced with anything where you cannot replace the human intelligence with artificial intelligence will survive, and anything where you are able to replace will vanish. And we used to think lawyers cannot be replaced with artificial intelligence. We thought doctors cannot be replaced with artificial intelligence. We thought many of our IT workloads cannot be replaced with automated systems. But today we see that that's ground reality. So old jobs will vanish and new jobs will emerge. And you as a young professional should open your mind to see this world differently, right? And some of the new jobs will evolve, and which will need empathy a lot. Okay, right? Like the core aspect of human being, right? Like showing empathy towards others, understanding others, right? Those are the qualities that we cannot replace so easily with all those new technologies. And that means people live longer, and So elderly care, green technology, consumer goods and services, training, skill development, emotional well-being, lifestyle. These are areas where you will see new jobs appearing. So entertainment, security, privacy, confidentiality. So these are the technology areas. So where you will see new jobs coming up. And people who depend and live based on old jobs will have to migrate to new jobs, and on-demand work will become a standard. So just as an Uber driver makes himself available when he wants to work, or the Swiggy delivery guy who makes himself available only when he wants to, this on-demand work culture will get into every aspect of it. And this idea that you have to work for 40 hours, 45 hours in a week will vanish, and we will work only on demand. So it's probably, when I first say it, it may look threatening, but that's the most part of human history we were living. Like when we were an agricultural society, we woke up early morning, we had some work to do before the sun hit the, sun became intensive. And then towards evening, we had some work, but in between, we were playing games and relaxing. I mean, that's what we found when we excavated a city like Killarney, right? So people had a lot of free time. People did spend things on entertainment and lifestyle. And the way we spend all our week working is probably not the way we used to live. So maybe we are just going back to normal, right? So on-demand work will become normal, and more free time means more time for entertainment. So some of you who want to pursue a career in entertainment, this is a cue for you. And I want you to go and research a little bit about these Swiss watches, and they are beautiful, expensive, and you have that brand pride when you own one of them. I want you to go and explore its link to agriculture, jewelry, and how suddenly such a marvel happened in Switzerland, and how this is now popular across the globe. Right? Do your own research and find it out for yourself. So this Industry 4.0 is about education. We saw a few things. Like when we employers hire, we hire for attitude. I mean, this is the way it used to be 20 years ago, 30 years ago. We hire for attitude and we train people on skills. And typically, we spoke about 3 different types of skills: technical, domain, and soft skills. And when you are Industry 4.0 ready, there's boundaries between engineering disciplines, right? Like, oh, I'm an electronics engineer, I don't understand software, or I'm a software guy, I don't understand basic engineering. That's all going to vanish. This division of labor, right? If we go to human history and see this division of labor started with agricultural revolution, right? When humans first started cultivating, this division of labor started. You had one guy who was a farmer, then there is another guy who was part of the army, then there was a guy who, these different aspects of classes of society came in, and different people started doing different jobs, and that started with that. But now, with the way this whole thing is transforming, maybe we are at a juncture where we have to reinvent ourselves as human beings. So 3 main things I'd like to share with you. These are based on my observations and my research. So the common values that you can instill in yourself, or with respect to moral, ethical, and like compassion, altruism, and loyalty, these are qualities you have to instill among yourself. Being socially responsible, how to handle values. I mean, when 2 values conflict with each other, how to handle that, and how do you democratically debate and agree, disagree, and move forward together. And the country keeps saying this, like, we need to be a knowledge-based society, and we have to do evidence-based research. There has to be scientific temper. These are words that are being used in the everywhere these days. People say, "Oh, no, we need this, we need this." Yeah, we had this. What happened to it today? Right. So we have to think, and we have to reinstill those in our, like in our DNA. And again, like as a recruiter, I see that among 100 or 200 people we interview, One or two are able to interpret context. One or two are able to survive logical reasoning, logical fallacy handling. So there is a huge scope for improvement in quality of our education system, and like in terms of instilling teamwork, leadership qualities. And you have to understand history in the context of our constitution, our legal systems, and how they have taken today's shape across the globe. These things are important to live and thrive in the society. Of course, everything is about communication. So you need the language skills, listening skills. Language, we always think about speaking, but listening is a very important aspect. Storytelling, we live in a storytelling world. If you cannot tell what you know as a story, then you cannot communicate. And when you don't communicate, then it results in conflict. Again, you have to be sensitive towards cultures across the planet. Different cultures have different problems, and you have to work together, negotiate, and move forward. Right? Yeah, I think whether it's agriculture or any other thing that you're going to end up working on, right? You have to define success in life in a balanced manner. Success in life is not about money, okay? Because you have plenty of it, then you realize it doesn't mean anything. You have plenty of power, you realize it doesn't mean anything. You have plenty of material, you realize it doesn't mean anything. And you have plenty of knowledge. The ultimate aspect of knowledge is then you realize it doesn't mean anything, right? But you need to define success in life in a balanced manner. It's finally about human happiness. So you are actually searching for happiness in your life, and it can come through your values and not through money, power, or material. So finally, in the middle of difficulty lies an opportunity. I think this wave of IoT, this wave of artificial intelligence finally gives us an opportunity to stand up from our office chairs and say, hey, I'm not a robot. And I hope the challenges ahead will make us more human, operating with more emotional intelligence, empathy, communication skills, and operating with human and environmental values. With respect to farming, this also means that we help this society transform into something new where everybody, finally I would like to define this happiness as how many people can be happy on a given day simultaneously. We cannot reach 100%. Keeping everybody absolutely happy on every given day, it's probably not going to happen. But what percentage of people are happy when they go to bed or when they rise up from the bed on any given day? I think that's the opportunity in front of us. Yeah, with that, I'd like to thank for the opportunity today and opening the floor for questions.
Sir, good morning, sir. I'm Dr. NSS Program Officer.
Sir, I didn't get your name.
Sir, Sendil Kumar, NSS Program Officer, sir.
Hi, Sendil.
Sir, actually, mostly we just want to do all the things for the villages, sir. In that point of village, how far it is feasible, and what about the cost that we have to bear for all the things, sir?
See, I think with respect to villages, the way you are operating in NSS today, right? Like, I think the most important thing you can do is to educate them, right? Educate them to use technology.
Yes, sir.
And the first IoT device that you have is your mobile phone, right? And
yes,
start with that. I mean, many people don't even know how to create a WhatsApp group and use it efficiently and for some meaningful thing, right? So identify some small low-hanging opportunities where there is zero cost, but there is shared intelligence and benefit of using shared intelligence. So, the biggest challenge I see in this is you can use technology to spoil yourself. You can use technology to do something great, right? Unfortunately, it has to be taught how to use technology, right? I mean, you can use a WhatsApp group to forward nonsense, and you can use WhatsApp to forward a lot of intelligent information to benefit a huge number of people. right? So it's about education. So that's why I covered some aspects of education and the values to instill, right? Like now in this questions context, this slide, if you look at this slide, there is zero investment to enable people on this, right? So if you are able to enable people on these, there is zero investment. You have to teach them how to handle value conflict, right? Like on one end, say a good example of value conflict is when Corona situation hit, the government has two problems in front of you. One is you have economy on one hand, you have human life on another hand. So is economy important? Yes. Is human life important? Yes. So you have a value conflict in front of you, and you have to handle that, right? How do you negotiate? How do you communicate? How do you tell a story? How do you listen, right? All this come into context. And how will you democratically address this? And today you start a WhatsApp group. I see only nonsense being communicated and gossiping being happening in it, but you can do wonders with it, right? So maybe that's a zero investment, minimal starting point. Identify some small opportunities for them to use technology in the right way, and slowly you can bring in the next IoT devices. Like it will happen. So the next point of IoT device. So now going back to my other diagram. Now let me. Is my screen still visible? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So now, if you look at this, buying an IoT-enabled tractor in a US agricultural system will accept it. One of our customer manufactures a machine that can handle 2.5 lakh eggs. It can sort the size and pack them. 2.5 lakh eggs. Think of the size and scale of that machine. And how many of our, agriculturers or a farmer who has a poultry system can handle it, buy that, right? So not every technology is affordable for our system today, but you have to start somewhere small. And being students, you can think of college projects which can help them in some small ways, right? Like your moisture detectors. I see a lot of, when I go to colleges and interact with students, I see a lot of people doing a lot of projects with respect to, humidity, moisture sensing, all this. But nothing reaches the end user, right? So whenever you do a small project, try to make sure it reaches the end user.
Yes, sir.
And they use it and let them say, make sure your students understand the pain it takes to convince a small farmer to say, yes, this piece of technology is useful to me. Because what it will do is the student will be more knowledgeable end of the day, and the farmer gets some benefit. And this ecosystem where these dots are now unconnected, they just come together.
Yes, sir.
I hope I answered your question.
Yes, sir. So, do you tie up with any villages like that, and have you got any experiences with the village people like that, sir, through your Calicito? Do you have any experiences like that, sir?
Right now we don't have any. We do this. Technology is our bread and butter, and most of the things that we do, we work with customers in Western world, right?
Yes.
And there are many. So among my customers, there are customers in, particularly after the COVID situation. One day I realized that every project that we run has some link to human food consumption, right? At some point, that's something I can see. But to reach an Indian field, I've not attempted. But I think knowing the size and scale and what people can invest, it has to be started as a non-profit social initiative. And if you have any ideas, I'm open to listen and support, sir.
Okay, sir. Sir, what's about the government support regarding this technology, sir? So, because our concept is now digital India, So we have to make everything in digitalized. That is their concept. So what's the kind of support that we get from government regarding that, sir? So as an industry, what do you feel about it, sir? And do you get any support, sir?
Sir, I had one slide where I said we are as prepared as we are prepared. We were
Yes,
prepared
sir.
with Industry 1.0. That
Yes,
is
sir.
my
Yes,
personal
sir.
opinion. At the same time, I go by what I see in websites where it's .gov.in websites, right? I don't go by WhatsApp forwards and even news media. I completely ignore these days. I only go
Yes,
by
sir.
what I read in .gov.in websites. But I think we are not really prepared to face what is ahead of us.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, sir.
Yeah.
Participants can raise your hand so that you will be unmuted to ask your queries. Sir,
Sir, excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Sir, is it audible?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Sir, I am Dr. Devdas, NSS Program Officer, sir. Sir, now that agricultural in developed country, they may be looking about soilless agricultural. Is it any idea about soilless agricultural?
Sir,
Is it yeah.
No, I come from a family where we moved out of agriculture probably 3, 4 generations ago, and even my experience is purely from. So I'm not really a guy qualified to answer this question. Right? I'm a technology guy who makes my living out of technology, and I do help some companies that make equipment and stuff that reaches the agricultural space, but I don't think I'm fully qualified to answer this question.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Sir, is it possible to any collaborative work for with your company like us, NSS?
Sir, as I said, I am open to explore non-profit, meaningful collaborative one because I have to make it clear because for the same thing we may charge a fortune with our regular customers, but I'm open to help people in a complete non-profit way. But it has to be a meaningful association, and it has to be I'm a long-term guy. I don't want to do one initiative, one photo opportunity. Not we would rather prefer to be absolutely silent, but do something absolutely meaningful.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
So please contact us. I mean, feel free to contact us if you have any ideas on a long-term, slow, meaningful, long-term steps.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. We will definitely, sir.
Sir, we have a question for you.
Sure.
So, easily available and effectively feasible IoT technique with low financial setup. So, can you answer this question, sir?
See, as I mentioned, when every year I go to some colleges invite me for their final year project review, and I go beautiful technologies like students having access to beautiful technologies and doing wonderful things. What I don't see is that being taken to the last mile, right? Like you as NSS, you are in a much better position to identify these projects that are happening in small corners in your institutions. Take it to the field, make the student interact with the farmer, tell him that, hey, this is your customer, and now make this customer happy. Okay, and that's how it has to start, sir. Hello.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So, the next question is there any organizations helping youths and farmers to motivate these things, sir?
No, sir. I don't have the. I mean, as I said, I'm not qualified to answer this question.
So the next question is how will IoT enhance productivity in agriculture, sir?
Sir, as I mentioned, productivity is least of our problems in the agricultural space today. Like when we got independence, there was a problem here where we didn't have enough food for our people, right? Uh, that was, I think, with green revolutions, and we have made progress where uh, that's not our problem now. Now our problem is different. Now our problem is on the price fluctuation side. Now our problem is on supply chain streamlining. So it's really a different game. I mean, to see, we are seeing that across the planet, 50% of the food is getting wasted. What are we going to do by increasing productivity?
So there was a question from our audience, sir, like, what made you to think about this innovations in agriculture, sir?
No, I never really thought about agriculture when I started out on this. I'm not really what I see is, see, I was like one of you in a college final year, hoping that there will be a campus interview and some company will pay me some X lakhs or lakhs per month, per year. And uh, I defined happiness like any one of you. When I started out, I defined happiness like any one of you. A campus interview, campus job, uh, enough number of lakhs per year, and I thought that's all you need. At some point of time, you wanted to work abroad, and that's how life started, and that's how we started. But then slowly we realized that that's not what happiness is, and we started searching towards happiness. And but by this time, we are already deep into a particular area of work, and for me, it happened to be this Industry 4.0 space. I didn't plan to be in this, but I think my natural inclination was towards this. So right from my first year in college, I used to say I will be there in something to do with communication space, and so there was a natural inclination where I ended up here. And today I discovered that I can offer some meaningful advice in some areas, some limited areas.
Yes, sir, that was really interesting, sir. And there was another query, sir, like, what are the impacts of IoT in agriculture in recent days?
Uh, I I don't know is my answer. Right. I'm not a person who follows Indian agriculture so closely. I don't have my feet dirty. I would like to answer this question if my feet are dirty and I have got onto the field and worked with those people. I have not done that.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I'm a robotic student, sir. So basically, so moving into IoT, what are the skills that I should possess or learn now to cope with the industry, sir?
Okay. So when I was mentioning, I said, there is a huge need in this space for interoperability and collaborative working, right? Both in terms of a technically intensive manner as humans, right? If you look at, we collaborate among multiple companies who are naturally competing with each other, right? So you may think these two companies are die-hard competitors and they will never sit together and work on a common problem. But today, engineers across these companies are working together to solve. So even collaborating with your enemy is extremely important in today's world, right? That's on a human element. But even when you talk about robotics, if you say, "Oh, my robot is the best and greatest," but you cannot invent every single equipment mankind needs. And there are going to be enough number of intelligent people out there who are going to solve one problem in front of them. And these different bots that you produce, it may be a software intelligence or it may be a mechanical robot, but they have to talk among themselves, and you have to be ready to collaborate both at a technology intensive level as well as a human being.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. And there are some standards. Just to add, there are some standards. So basically, what is IEEE doing? IEEE is standardizing some things. Why do they standardize? Because then it lets you collaborate. So follow what standards are relevant in your space and equip yourself on those standards. Understand what those standards don't have today and stay ahead of that.
Sir, what made you
Hello,
to
sir.
think about innovations in agriculture?
Hey, I prepared for this meeting today. My slide deck is a standard one, but I prepared for this meeting today. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
And that's also live. That is one more video in our website where all the statistics is already. You can go to our YouTube channel and there is a video on agriculture. Most of what I told you today is also there in that video. Right? It was released a couple of years back.
Hello, sir. Sir, you had said that you are working with Western organizations, no, sir?
Yeah.
Because it is, as we know, they all have productivity where they work in a large farms under a single person. So it is more efficient for them to do IoTs. But considering our Indian background, what do you think? Do you think it is first efficient to apply IoT for smaller fields or regular agriculture farmers?
See, I think the problem here is it's not a question that you and I can answer. It is the government's role to say, okay, no, this is the vision and this is the strategy, right? Because you cannot take the Western world technology and just apply it here. It simply does not work. Right? What works in Western world is completely different. See, I have lived in Canada, right? One of my first experience outside India was in Canada, and the first thing I realized is if you are not so advanced in terms of technology, people will simply die there in the cold. For you to live, you need technology. Here, our situation is not that, right? So our problems are different, their problems are different. And any technology we invent for them, I mean, today, why do all of us want to work in IT? Because we solve their problems sitting there and they are paying us where we have the currency conversion, we make a lot of money and it makes it interesting. But can we take those technologies and directly apply it here? Probably not. As in my slide, I had mentioned that we need different approaches for developing world and developed world. And one of the main questions that comes to my mind is, okay, at this level of automation, everybody will become jobless. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Right? So these are policy decisions that have to come from the government, and then government say, okay, now this is the strategy. To me, giving free food to everyone is fine as long as it is part of a well thought out strategy. And everybody spends all their time in entertainment and having a happy life. It's a wonderful thing, but it should be a proper strategy and there should be a proper way to reach that point.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sir, how do you see IoT after 10 years?
If you, assuming you guys are married and you probably have kids, and then if you take them to your grandkids, grandparents, great grandparents, assuming they are still alive, and they will no longer be able to relate to each other's life, right? Like if you wake up somebody from Akbar's era and then bring it, or let's say Ashoka's era, like you wake up a dead man from Ashoka's era and then bring him to the time when Akbar was ruling, he would have still managed to understand how life was happening, right? But then here we are talking about 50, 60 years and there won't be, they will not be able to understand each other by any means. That's the kind of change we foresee in our lifestyle.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for patiently responding to all the questions raised by our audience.
It was good. It was good opportunity to interact with all of you. And being NSS cadres, I really request you to see how you can connect the last mile with simple technologies and enabling them with the knowledge to use the technologies. I think that's the missing link I see.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Gratitude is a powerful catalyst for happiness. It's the spark that lights the fire of joy in your soul. Now I request our secretary, Mr. S. Muthu Vignesh, to deliver vote of thanks.
Feeling gratitude and not expressing it. It is like wrapping a present and not giving it. Honorable Chief Guest, Program Officers, and students, a very happy and graceful morning, everyone. I feel delighted to deliver the vote of thanks on behalf of Astra 2021. I extend a heartfelt thanks to our Chief Guest, Mr. K. Bhagat Singh, who has enlightened our minds with his thoughts and has shown us a new path. I would also like to thank our program officers of National Service Scheme who worked behind us to make this event happen. Finally, a big thanks to my dear student volunteers and participants for their willingness and untiring involvement for the event. Once again, a sincere gratitude to each and everyone for making this event what it was. Thank you.
Thank you, Muthu Vignesh. I once again thank you all for gracing this occasion with your presence and making this event a grand success. Now I request the participants to kindly fill the feedback form provided in the chat box with correct name and registration ID for certification purpose.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.